What is manipulation? It is of primary importance to establish a clear definition of manipulation for the purposes of this book. Without understanding exactly what constitutes manipulation, there will be a great deal of difficulty in separating instances of manipulation and other forms of influence. While you probably have your own idea of what counts as manipulation, it is important that you adopt the book's definition in order to make sense of the practical advice in later chapters. Basic ideas. In a broad sense, manipulation is the effort to affect the behavior or perception of others. Most definitions extend that to include, via the use of abusive, deceptive, or otherwise exploitative means, or something similar, as a means of differentiating between manipulation and other influencing behaviors, such as persuasion. That raises even more questions, such as what constitutes exploitative. Deception is relatively easy to define as a willful concealment or alteration of the truth. But does deception really preclude persuasion? At a job interview, you probably won't mention the times you came in late to work at your previous job due to hangovers. Is that manipulation? You could argue that anyone hiring for a job is already operating on the understanding that people are likely to highlight their positive traits and draw attention away from the negatives. In that sense, it isn't necessarily dishonest to omit certain information in that situation. So expectation can also play a part in determining the ethics of manipulation and where the line is drawn between manipulation and other forms of influence. Putting ethics aside for now, there is another word, in that broad definition, worthy of attention. Defining manipulation as an effort suggests that manipulation is still manipulation regardless of success or failure. The act of manipulation is defined as the attempt. Ironically, those least successful at manipulating others, who are most frequently discovered, are more likely to gain a reputation as manipulative than those who succeed. You can probably point to someone in your orbit, a relative or coworker perhaps, who you consider to be manipulative. Yet, consider how others view them. Are they well known as a manipulator? Does this impact their success? The answer to this, too, may be complicated. If someone is considered by their peers at work to be manipulative and yet hold sway over the boss, they might still be judged successful. When thinking about manipulating others, it's important to define clear goals. This will allow you to make rational, objective decisions, which is key to success. At this point, there are too many questions and too few answers. The remainder of this chapter will tie up some loose ends and establish a definition that will give bearing for the rest of the book. Manipulation versus influence. The modern world has adopted the term influencer for people with a large social media following, capable of influencing others with their content. It doesn't take a particularly critical mind to recognize the source of this term as advertising. As consumer behavior evolves, advertisers have taken note and increasingly look to harness the power of influencers to gain attention for products. This is done variously through paid or unpaid sponsorships, promotional deals, and agreements. In some cases, influencers disclose these agreements while, in others, they don't. Ethical questions are again raised, particularly if an influencer is ostensibly just a happy consumer but secretly on the payroll of the company which sells the product. Surely this whole moral quandary could have been avoided if advertisers instead coined the term manipulator. Yet it's hardly surprising that they didn't. What this highlights is that, although people expect advertisers to be manipulative, it is still unthinkable that they would admit to it. Instagram stars happily list themselves as influencer on their profile page with seemingly no negative connotations. But the goals of many influencers, especially those who work with advertisers, are fundamentally manipulative. It's not even a gray area issue. Influencers aim to shift products to their followers in order to make money. It is not possible to know if everyone they influence would benefit from the product, nor is it possible to know their financial situation or any specific circumstances. In this case, the influencer is putting their own interests first. Manipulation does not necessarily include an attempt to harm others. However, it must, to some degree, place one's own goals and interests first. This is part of the puzzle. Additionally, it is safest and most logical to refer to influence as a parent term of manipulation, one which includes manipulation and other methods of influence, such as inspiration and emulation. Manipulation versus persuasion. These terms might seem diametrically opposed, with persuasion acting as the honest form of manipulation, where the actor is upfront about their goals and opinions. However, for the purposes of this book, it will be more useful to consider persuasion as a tier below manipulation. Persuasion, then, becomes a method of manipulation, which is a form of influence. Persuasion also happens to be one of the less effective methods of manipulation. How often have you been in a debate with someone else, only for them to hold up their hands and say, "I concede, you are absolutely right"? It is probably possible for you to count these instances on one hand. It may be easy to persuade someone that smoking is unhealthy, but is it easy to persuade them to quit? If it were so, governments wouldn't see the need or benefit in placing heavy taxes on tobacco products in order to discourage use. According to this book's definition, the government is trying to manipulate the consumption of tobacco and using a range of methods, including persuasion, to achieve that end. So what about other forms of influence? And other methods of manipulation? Well, manipulation needs to have intent, and it ought to have some form of goal, even if that goal is just to create anarchy. A great filmmaker may influence the work of many others, but it is clearly distinct from manipulation. The filmmaker doesn't set out to influence others, although they may, rather they achieve influence through the reaction of others to their work, resulting in inspiration and even emulation. Persuasion, likewise, is not the only method of manipulation one could employ. An easy alternative is lying, a form of deception. To lie and to be believed will inevitably change the perception of those who believe the lie. As has already been established, it is still manipulation whether it is successful or not. Persuasion, like influence, doesn't suffer from quite the same image problem as manipulation. In fact, it's seen as a positive thing to be able to make a persuasive argument. Although it does have a sinister tinge, the phrase, "I can be very persuasive," implies some exertion of power over another party, possibly even an abuse. Also, when employers refer to the soft skill of persuasion, it is correct to understand this as a euphemism for manipulation. At least in part. Defining manipulation. Concluding this chapter, it is now possible to create a suitable and helpful definition of manipulation for the purposes of this book. Manipulation is a form of intentional influence, characterized as an attempt, by a person or party, the manipulator, to change the behavior of another person or party, the target, typically with a view to achieving a goal in the manipulator's interests. There is no nefarious implication, nor is it specified whether or not the manipulator is acting in, against, or with no regard for the interests of the target. All are possible. This achieves a definition of manipulation which is not constrained by subjective ethical ideas. Although that doesn't mean you should abandon your morals as well. This definition is useful because it is objective and clear. Also, it is helpful because, in this book, you will learn techniques for manipulation that will help you to achieve your goals. In that respect, it would be a mistake to exclude persuasion, which absolutely can play an important role in manipulation and is inextricable from the advice in this book. Two problems remain, however. The first relates to intended influence. Intent is difficult because it implies responsibility. In actual fact, everyone manipulates everyone around them all the time, even from a young age. It would be wrong to exclude a child's temper tantrum from the umbrella of manipulation, just because they aren't old enough to rationalize their behavior. The same applies to adult temper tantrums, for that matter. Intent, therefore, does not imply conscious behavior, it can also be instinctive. This also allows for the very real presence of naturally manipulative persons. The second problem is the disappointingly vague ending, typically to achieve a goal in the manipulator's interests. Not only is it problematic to define the manipulator's interests, there is a catch-all ambiguity in the inclusion of typically. This part serves only to create a normalized idea of manipulation for the purposes of this book and absolutely wouldn't suit a more general definition. After all, how can someone perfectly know their own interests? It is of course possible to successfully manipulate someone, and for the result to still be one's own demise. The latter problem is addressed during the course of the book, at points where it happens to be relevant. Despite its flaws, this definition of manipulation is sufficient for the practical parts of the book. Examples of manipulation. With the definition established, it is now of use to recognize some examples of manipulation. Some of these are common in everyday life, while others relate to unique or spectacular events. While this book relates primarily to personal manipulation, there is little theoretical difference between manipulation on an individual level and on a grand scale. The same principles almost always apply, but the practicalities of manipulation methods, such as deception, can be more complex between, say, warring nations. Advertising. Even the most innocuous advertising is trying to inform you, with a view to changing behavior or perception. It is, by this book's definition, manipulation. Some advertising may have positive intentions, such as adverts to raise money for charities, although the ethical practices of charities can and have also been drawn into question on many occasions, or a positive impact, such as an advert that informs you of genuine savings or advantages offered by a product or supplier. On the more insidious end of the scale, you have advertising methods such as influencers, who attempt to affect your purchasing decisions by encouraging emulation of their lifestyle. There are also online adverts which are often indistinguishable from other content. Even the most ethical websites normally only flag up paid ads with a small, sponsored tag. Other times, adverts may be completely undisclosed. Advertising can manipulate by highlighting the positive features of a product or service. It is difficult to trust adverts as an accurate source of information because they are inherently biased. Techniques such as subliminal advertising sometimes go to extremes to drive messages about a product into your subconscious. You may have seen famous examples of sexual figures or messages woven into cocktail glasses to advertise alcohol, but that's just the tip of the ice cube. Military strategy. History offers countless examples of military foes attempting to manipulate one another. Like in advertising, this manipulation is completely expected. If you believe in the cause for which you are fighting, it is also morally justifiable to manipulate your enemy in any way. The Battle of Hastings, 1066 AD, saw the Norman William the Conqueror, spoiler alert, invade England with his army, comprised of many mounted knights. He was met by Harold Godwinson, the recently coronated King of England, at Hastings, near the English Channel. According to legend, Harold took position atop a hill and waited for the approaching invaders. William, seeing the disadvantage of fighting uphill, ordered a retreat, with the intention of luring the defenders into a pursuit. The plan was a success. Sensing victory, Harold pursued William's army down the hill and, in the process, sacrificed their advantageous position. The rest, they say, is history. William's mounted knights were able to overwhelm the largely infantry-based army of Harold, and his victory thwarted his only significant opposition in England. Although the accuracy of this account has been called into question, the lesson of the legend prevails: manipulate your enemy and you will achieve victory. You can also find many instances of wars fought as characterizations of military leaders. Rommel, a German World War II general, was famed for his tactical brilliance in North African campaigns against Allied forces, earning his nickname, the Desert Fox. Techniques to obstruct or distort the information received by a military adversary follow the same principles as those you would use for another person. It is also possible to draw parallels to games such as chess and real-time strategy video games, where successful strategies often revolve around deceiving your opponents with regards to your own intentions. The professional world. If you work in a company, it's likely that you've been exposed to ambitious individuals whose goal is to climb the corporate ladder. Again, in the professional world, a certain level of manipulation is to be expected. This is one of the reasons that working together with personal friends can create complications, as a conflict exists in managing these two different kinds of relationships, competitive and supportive. In professional life, you are presented with a range of different relationship paradigms. Your relationship to fellow team members will vary to that with your boss, or to those who work under you. Modern corporate structures tend to be flatter, and a managerial approach that relies purely on authority is less viable than it used to be. It's up to managers and team leaders to motivate their employees. Well done if you immediately identified motivation as another form of manipulation. This book concerns itself specifically with professional and personal relationships, so expect some relevant examples for manipulation in the workplace. Personal relationships. This is inevitably the most controversial arena for manipulation, yet ironically it is probably the most natural. From the moment you're born, you come pre-programmed with the ability to cry, a simple and effective way to communicate immediate needs, in order to receive care and attention. Manipulation happens in family relationships as well as in friendships and romantic relationships. The reason for controversy is rooted in the idea that contriving to manipulate others in personal relationships is something unnatural and rooted in a need for control. Although, once again, there is some gray area. It's quite normal for a parent to manipulate a child's behavior by using a system of incentives and punishments. This is normally considered to be part of a child's education and a healthy part of development, preparing a child for adulthood. Manipulation in a romantic relationship, however, is viewed as something less than chivalrous. It conjures up the idea of an individual lying and emotionally blackmailing their partner in order to disguise behavior or trap someone in a relationship. On the other side of the coin, it's plausible that people would praise manipulation, including deceit, if the end goal was to help a partner quit smoking or lose weight. These ethical questions are addressed later in the book. For now, it's just useful to consider the different scenarios where manipulation may be present. Try examining the world around you to spot examples of manipulation and understand the mechanisms with which they operate. Advantages of manipulation. This chapter isn't long. The benefits of manipulation are plainly obvious, much like the benefits of bank robbery. Successfully manipulating others is a way to impact the world around you and bend it to your will. That might sound sinister, but remember it's extremely likely that you're already doing it to some degree. To differentiate between what you might already be doing and what you can learn from this book, instead interpret this chapter as the benefits of consciously, deliberately, and effectively manipulating others. Achieve your goals. By successfully manipulating others, you can alter their behavior, their views, and possibly even their goals to help further your own interests. It's as simple as that. Effective manipulation, however, is about improving your rate of success. It might be that everyone is manipulating the boss, to some degree, in order to get the promotion, but only one candidate is going to get the job. Working hard is a good place to start, and working effectively is even better. However, leaving it to merit alone might not get you through. How can you make it so that your boss wants to promote you, rather than anyone else? Understanding that will give you the edge. Likewise, it's one thing to tell your crush you like them, but another to be the object of their desire. Effective manipulation is about cultivating a situation where your success is the most likely, or ideally the inevitable, result. Help others. If you believe in a cause, you can support it by using manipulation to further its success. This can be anything from using a swear jar to stop a relative cursing, to earning support for your political party. It's the same as achieving your own goals, but you're transplanting the interests of someone or something else in place of your own. As stated in the definition, manipulation is a form of influence. Guard yourself against the manipulation of others. The more you understand about manipulation, the better equipped you'll be to avoid being manipulated by others. Recognizing manipulative behaviors in other people will not only protect you against their influence, but you'll learn more about their goals, feeding your mind with information that you can use to manipulate them. It's not hard to be aware of situations where you can expect to encounter manipulative behavior. What's more difficult is to always spot the ways in which you are being manipulated. A key part of this is understanding the goals of other parties and how they are attempting to achieve those goals at any given moment. With this information, not only can you recognize and capitalize on the behavior of others, you can develop the ability to predict the future actions of your adversaries. This requires emotional intelligence, as it is absolutely necessary to be able to place yourself in the shoes of your target. In developing this ability, a good place to start is by assessing your own behavior through your actions and learning to understand your choices from an objective standpoint. Doing so will require some practice, but later chapters will cover that in some detail. Manipulation fundamentals. Without further ado, it's time to get into some of the crucial aspects of manipulating others. Thanks to the early chapters, you should now have the groundwork to give context to the ideas in this chapter and form a general understanding of effective approaches to manipulation. In the chapter Methodology, you will learn how to use these ideas in order to form a coherent strategy that will improve your chances of successfully manipulating others and achieving your goals. Given that you're probably already manipulating the people around you to some degree, and being manipulated yourself, the first significant step in achieving effective manipulation is to understand and define your goals. Without defining goals, it's impossible to measure the effectiveness of your current manipulation efforts. That's not to say you aren't already manipulating with some level of effectiveness. Some people are naturally more manipulative and some people are natural manipulators. However, the two don't always overlap. Start by thinking about your actions and your behavior around others. Consider who you view positively at work or in your social circle and who you view negatively. Consider, further, how you behave around different people and whether it aligns perfectly to your opinion of them. There is a good chance that it doesn't. In fact, what you are probably already doing is working to earn the good opinion of others who you believe to hold power and influence. This is a very general approach that everyone takes in society. To use an obvious example, your behavior around your boss is probably different to that of your peers, regardless of your personal opinion of them. You may even have a set goal, such as reaching X position. Otherwise, you might just be broadly trying to impress. You might even be trying to carve out an easy work life for yourself, shedding responsibility and doing what you can to obscure your low productivity. Maybe you're acting to bring yourself closer to a coworker in whom you are romantically interested. These are just ideas. At the end of each day, think about your own behavior. What did you spend your day thinking about and trying to achieve? These are the goals you are naturally working towards already. When you really understand what your current motives are, you might surprise yourself. In order to start manipulating effectively, it's time to clearly and consciously define your goals. If you've already done so, that's great. Make sure you have something with a clearly defined endpoint. Rather than just do well at work, consider earn a raise, or, even better, earn a salary of $X per year by MM/DD/YY. By not only defining a goal, but a date as well, you are giving yourself the added motivation of avoiding failure. With a clearly defined goal, you can start assessing your actions against your objective. Ask yourself, will this action help me achieve X? And you might already be able to make smarter decisions. Don't stop reading just yet, though. There are some important considerations to make before you suddenly change your behavior. Watch out for snakes in the grass. The goals of others. While your own goals are the way to measure the success of your efforts, the goals of others are key to forming a successful manipulation strategy. The key to manipulation is using the goals of others to further your own. This is the most all-encompassing theory of manipulation and the core of this book's approach to manipulation. At times, you might hold the cards and can help someone to achieve their own goals. This might be as an employee who possesses vital assets for your boss to achieve success in their role. It might be the case that you are the boss and have the power to promote people, not discounting the power you have to help those people achieve their goals by not firing them. Having what it takes to help other people achieve their goals gives you inherent value to them. Here are some examples of situations in which your goals can interact with those of another, in order to benefit you. Sticking with the professional field as a reference, say that one of your coworkers is put in charge of a business trip to a trade expo. Whatever their broader career goals may be at that point, it is likely that part of achieving them will be to have a successful trade expo. If that person has reason to believe your assets will help them to achieve that success, they are likely to take you as well. Gaining that experience will be valuable to your career, potentially raising your value as an employee and putting you in greater standing for a promotion. This is a simplified example to illustrate this line of thinking. It seems obvious, but by breaking it down, it's possible to make an evaluation of where you fit into the goals someone else wants to achieve. It might be that your employer, whose goal is to achieve higher profits, plans to expand your division. They might decide to do this based on the success of your division or the emergence of an expanded market for the service you provide. The knock-on effect would be an increased requirement for your labor. Suddenly you've gone up in value and it might be harder for your boss to refuse offering you a raise. For example, say that you work in a construction company, and a new technology comes into the fore, which happens to require specialist crane operation and you happen to be an experienced crane operator. In this case, your boss is probably looking to hire more crane operators, which takes time, potentially requires training and other investments on their part. It's likely that, even giving you a raise, your boss would still avoid cost of hiring someone new, let alone the bother. In both of these examples, you have the power to help someone achieve their goals. This is what drives your success. There is no element of manipulation here, it is simply an analysis of how your goals can relate to those of others. The manipulation will come with cultivating these situations, by working to ensure the actions others take, to achieve their goals, align with your own. Now, consider personal relationships. Imagine that you are romantically interested in someone else. Your ultimate goal might be to enter into a relationship with that person. All of a sudden, things get extremely complicated. Not only is it unclear what a person might want from a relationship to you, it might be unclear even to themselves. Many people have not considered what forms the basis of their attraction to others. So if you want to effectively manipulate the situation to result in the start of your relationship together, it may be necessary for you to understand that person better than they understand themselves. For now, just hold on to the idea as a thinking point.